Hello everybody and welcome to another introduction video for New Japan Pro Wrestling. I was going to leave a comment replying to someone on the other video about the G1 Climax Tournament and realized I should probably just go ahead and do a video about the tournament. So, first off, let's talk a little bit about the history. I'll just go ahead and bring up the Wikipedia page for the G1 Climax, just to kind of go over the basic history of it. So originally it was called the World League, and it was first done in 1974. Then it changed to the MSG League, International Wrestling Grand Prix. The first year it was called that, Hulk Hogan actually won. Believe it or not, Hulk Hogan could actually do a proper wrestling match when he wanted to. Earlier on in his career, the problem, of course, was that WWF at the time had a very strict formula that they had him adhere to, so pretty much after the early 80s, he never had to work a match, really work a match ever again. So in 91, it started being called the G1 Climax, and it's kept that name ever since. So it's been around since the 70s. Has had quite an interesting history. I don't want to go through the whole thing because that would just take forever. I just wanted to kind of do the quick version. Sometimes it was held as a single elimination tournament, but for the most part, and currently, it is a round-robin style tournament. Now, what that means, if you're not into other sports, I'm not. I had to look it up when I first started watching this. Well, they explained it. The commentary I was watching explained it. Is everybody in a round-robin tournament goes up against everybody else. It's like the World Cup. They even today they have two blocks in the G1 Climax. I think the World Cup. My mouth doesn't want to work. In the World Cup, I think they have like a half a dozen or a dozen, a lot of different blocks, which is why it can actually get over so quickly. Even though practically every country in the world that has soccer teams gets involved in it to some degree. Although not every country goes to the actual tournament part. I don't know a whole lot about that because I don't watch it. I'm just comparing it to the only other round-robin tournament that I know of right off the top of my head. So the way it works for the G1 Climax, and I can go ahead and get off of that, I just wanted to briefly go over the history of it, is that it's going to start the July 4th this year, and I reckon this is why I'm doing the video. I want people to watch this. I think you'll enjoy watching the tournament because it'll help you get into the product. You'll see a lot of the mainstays, a lot of people who come in and work in New Japan currently. It'll help you get into the style. You'll see a majority of singles matches rather than mostly tag matches. You're still going to see a lot of tag team matches. I talked about that in the introduction video. The tag team matches is how New Japan both fills out its cards and makes sure that people get their paydays because they don't work the same kind of insane schedule that WWE does. And it also helps them keep their wrestlers safe for doing crazier stuff in the singles matches because they only work those singles matches maybe 20-30% of the time. I'm completely pulling that number out of my ass. But I was trying to think of something because the vast majority of matches that the wrestlers are going to be in are going to be tag team matches. So they don't have to work as much. Singles matches, because New Japan wants singles matches and title matches in the tag team division to be presented as proper athletic competition, they tend to pull out all the stops when it comes to the singles matches. So you're going to see a lot of crazy, hard-hitting shit during the tournament. You'll get a good taste of what New Japan singles matches are like, while at the same time getting exposed to the tag team style of, because they alternate days for the blocks. It goes A block, B block, A block, B block for 18 days, and then on the 19th they have the big final show. And I say it's 18 days because in a round robin, like I said, everybody faces everybody once, so there's 10 men in each block. That's 9 matches each. So 9 nights for each block, 18. Then you get the 2 winners at the end of the 18 days who have the most points in each block, and then they face off. Very, very occasionally they'll have a tie in a block that has to be resolved first, but that almost never happens. So the point system I just talked about, so I'll cover that now, is 2 points for a win, 0 points for a loss, 1 point each for a draw, which would happen on a count-out, double count-out, or time limit, which happen very rarely, but they do happen. Okay, so that's the tournament. 2 blocks, 10 guys each. Each one has 9 matches over the course of, let's see, so it starts July the 14th and goes through August 12th, so almost a full month. They stretch out those 19 nights. But again, you have to keep in mind that what these guys are doing is often 20-plus minute singles matches, hard-hitting, breakneck speed in some cases. It just depends on the individuals in question. And that, that's 9 nights for them during the tournament. And they don't hold back. That's what I'm trying to get across here. That's the purpose of the tag team matches, is to allow them the freedom to not hold back and be all WWE PG boring for their singles matches or tag matches and whatnot. So let's go ahead and get into the 2 different blocks. Alrighty then. I'm going to go ahead and bring up pictures. Let's just go over here, and Hiroshi Tanahashi is in the first block. This is Hiroshi Tanahashi right here. Try to find a good picture I can bring up for you. There he is. Kind of talk a little bit about each guy, give you a heads up on who they are. So, at Tanahashi and Steve Austin, yes it is. A lot of guys like Steve Austin, Jim Ross, a lot of those guys from the 90s that a lot of people are going to be familiar with, they love this guy. So that should tell you everything you need to know. I would say he's a little bit like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, and a little bit of Eddie Guerrero, because he uses a variation on the frog splash. He calls it the high fly flow, is his finisher. A little bit of Dean Malenko, because he also uses the Texas Cloverleaf. And he can go to the mat, he can fly, he can get a little gruff when he needs to. He doesn't take shit from anybody. So, yeah, I mean, you can definitely see that mid-90s influence on his style. So if you enjoyed mid to late 90s WWF and WCW, you'll like Tanahashi. He is a babyface, in the old school term or meaning of the word, of a good guy. He can cheat a little bit when somebody pisses him off. Like I said, he won't take no shit from anybody. He's been around too long. And for about 10 years, he was the man in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's kind of been taking a bit more of a back seat a little bit the last couple 3 years. But, he's starting to get up into his 40s, I believe. He's in his 40s, so starting to move back. And that's something I talked about in the other video with New Japan, is that it isn't, WWF, WWE, they will have somebody that gets into the main event scene, and they'll just keep them there until they can't stay anymore. They either quit, or they get injured, they die, basically. New Japan is a little bit more forgiving. It's a little bit more nice, I think, to its legends, in that it allows them to kind of gracefully start moving down the card again, so they can still stay relevant as long as they want to be involved. And then when they're ready to leave and retire, they can. And it also gives New Japan a bit of a parachute, a bit of a windfall, if you will, because they know they've got this. Admittedly, right now it's kind of small because, the guys have been getting older, and they're, the old batch of legends, and some of them have kind of retired from doing the tournament, and they haven't been as active, but it means that they have this group of guys who have proven themselves. It's okay if they lose. Nobody cares. They've already done everything they can that they're going to do and prove themselves to the audiences. So if they need one of those guys to step up and hold a title for a while, they can do it, and people have no problem with it. They believe it. So, New Japan has a lot of really good systems in place for how it deals with both the legends, the older guys who have proven themselves, held the titles, won the tournaments, and done what they're going to do with their careers, but keep them around and let them do what they're going to do on their own time, basically, while also bringing in new blood. Alright, so that's Tanahashi. Let's get to Minoru Suzuki. So Suzuki, I can only compare him maybe a little bit to Benoit, and I'm talking old school, good Benoit here. It kind of ignore all the nastiness that happened at the end with him. So let me bring up a good picture of Suzuki. He actually recently changed his look, so I don't think any of these ones really show what he looks like now, because he cut his hair differently and dyed it blonde, so he looks rather odd. He's one of those interesting guys in that in the ring, he's legit scary. Apparently outside of the ring, he's a real sweetheart and loves talking about things like anime, so just one of those weird ones that when he's on, you don't want to piss him off and get in his way, because he will hurt you. Let's see, that's a very small picture. That's not a small picture, but it's a boring picture. There we go. So let's see what I can think of with Suzuki. He's a bit of an oddball in the ring, too, in that since New Japan is all about work rate, it's all about doing the best you can in the ring, him and the rest of Suzuki Gun are kind of heels, based around the idea that they cheat, even though they don't need to. That's the theory behind it. Personally, I think it's kind of goofy, and they're very inconsistent. Because one match, Suzuki and the other members of the Suzuki Gun is his faction, his stable. One match they might be working clean, then they'll cheat, then they'll work clean. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. So during the tournament, you're likely to see him work clean some matches and cheat like a little bitch in other matches. Even though he's supposed to be the big scary badass. Like I said, the theory behind it is that he is the big scary badass, but he cheats just because he can. So that's why you're supposed to not like him. Doesn't work for me. I don't know about everybody else. the fact that everybody sings along to his intro music during one part in particular, and they cheer him for the most part. I don't know how you could call him a heel at all. Bad guy. But stylistically, bit hard to describe. He was brought up in shoot style that was around in the 90s. I'm not sure if there are any more shoot promotions around. But it was pro wrestling, but they wanted it to look as much like MMA as possible before MMA was even really a thing. They wanted it to look like an actual shoot. So that's what he was brought up in. And that it didn't last very long. It just didn't really work. So he ended up being one of the founding members of the Pancrase, I believe it's called, and was a legit MMA guy. Has like 50 bouts under his belt. Most of his wins by submission. So you're going to see him do a lot of submission stuff. He will often brawl on the outside. Like I said, all I can do is compare him to people that you might know. So I'd say kind of a combination of Raven and Benoit, which sounds absolutely bizarre, but that is the best I can get to. You know, because he has that ability to work a very brutal-looking submission-based style, but then he loves to brawl and use chairs and other weapons and brawl in the crowd and do all that stuff. So, yeah, a bit of a strange mix with him. Alright, so now we got Togi Makabe. He's another one of the older guys. He's kind of in the same group as Tanahashi. A little bit older, I think. Or been around a bit longer. Let me see if I can find a good picture of him. None of these are really good. There we go. Flipping the double bird. So Togi Makabe, another interesting individual. Apparently he worked a lot of his career as a technical wrestler. But then he kind of changed things up at some point and started working more or less the strong style. The New Japan strong style is going to be... It's one of those things they kind of mesh it in with all the other styles that work in New Japan, so it kind of forms a foundation. But there are still some guys who work that style almost exclusively. So strong style, you're going to see a lot of back and forth strikes, especially forearms. They will sometimes just forearm the hell out of each other for a couple of minutes at a time, just to see who can take it. That's the idea behind it. It's just to see who's going to give first. So you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see slams. You're going to see suplexes. A lot of strikes. A lot of clotheslines, lariats, lariato, as the Japanese like to say, although a hell of a lot more enthusiasm. Yeah, it's a brutal smash mouth style that you're going to see from Togi Makabe. Again, somebody from the WWF, WCW days, or if you're familiar, a lot of those guys take their inspiration from Stan Hansen, if you want to go back further. Another guy that you're probably more familiar with that is heavily influenced by Stan Hansen is Bradshaw. So Makabe, his finishers, I didn't really talk about Suzuki's finisher. He likes to go from a sleeper into the Gotch pile driver because he was trained by one of the old school guys, Karl Gotch. And it's a cradle pile driver, is what it is. So Makabe, he'll use... he was heavily inspired, I think, by King Kong Bundy. He really liked the... I think it was King Kong Bundy. So one of those guys. And he uses a big clothesline sometimes as a finisher. Most of the time, it's going to be a German suplex a spider suplex, a lot of people call it, but it's a German suplex or belly to back suplex properly from the or off the turnbuckle, and then he follows that up with a diving knee. Okay, then we got Yoshihashi. Let me see. There we go. There's a decent enough picture. You get another one right there. So there's Yoshihashi. Go back to the other one. So, Yoshihashi, he's been in New Japan for quite a while, but he hasn't really made his mark yet. He's one of the guys that I think he still needs something to really connect to the audience, to the crowd and everything. He works... yeah, even his style, I guess, is kind of generic. I can't think of anybody right offhand to compare him to, unfortunately. I'm not saying he's bad, or that even that he's boring, just that he doesn't stand out as much as some of the other guys. That's all I can really say about him. From him, you're going to see some good matches. Do not expect him to win the tournament. And honestly, there's not a whole lot else I can say about him. Like I said, he's not bad at all. But unfortunately, he is one of those guys that's just kind of there. Finishers, he uses a butterfly lock, and I think it's some sort of a slam that he likes to use. I can't remember exactly what it is. Alright, let's get to Michael Elgin. See if I can find a good picture of Elgin. That one's not too bad. He's actually lost a lot of weight, so I was trying to find a picture of him that's a bit newer. Alrighty. I guess that'll work as good as anything. So, Michael Elgin, Canadian power wrestler. So you're going to see a lot of traditional power wrestling stuff from him, but he's very versatile. He can actually he can do some high-flying stuff. He's pretty agile. I would compare him, Michael Elgin, I would compare him to Mike Awesome. He's just shorter. So maybe to some people he's not as impressive as Mike Awesome used to be, if you're familiar with Mike Awesome in ECW. Not Mike Awesome in WCW. WCW just totally hamstringed Mike Awesome and turned him into a joke. I'm talking about the Mike Awesome who would powerbomb people, anybody pretty much, in lots of different ways, and could still, at the size he was, could still fly out of the ring like The Undertaker. So, Mike Elgin, you're going to see a lot of traditional power wrestling stuff from him, but he will surprise you. He will do stuff that, looking at him, you would not believe he could do. Let's see, he uses combo as his primary finisher. He does like a running power bomb into the turnbuckle, buckle bomb. Then he'll grab them as they bounce back from that and do a spinning power bomb, spinning sit out, pinning power bomb. That's a mouthful. So you can expect a lot of really good matches from him. I don't think he'll win the tournament, but Gato, the main booker for New Japan, surprises me often enough. Then we have Evil. There's a decent enough picture of him. So Evil, I would kind of describe as a combination of Undertaker and let's see. And when I say Undertaker, that's more stylistic. Because he likes his goth look, I suppose you could call it. Let's see, stylistically wise, he likes to use a little bit of the hardcore stuff on the outside. He is not adverse to doing that at all. Yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody to compare him to style-wise. La Parka, I think, is who I compared him to before. Kind of Undertaker and La Parka if you remember WCW, kind of those two combined. Because his style is a little bit like a cruiserweight in some ways. You know, I guess that he reminds me of La Parka, because La Parka worked the cruiserweight division in WCW, but he was a bigger guy, and so he mostly used power wrestling stuff. Evil is kind of the same. He'll do some things that you'd expect more from a cruiserweight, like he does a really high senton splash. He doesn't really go high flying, though. But he mainly uses power wrestling and strong style. So again, you're going to see a lot of strikes, a lot of clotheslines and forearms, a lot of slams. And he uses this STO as his finisher. That's a step over. Is it a... I can't remember what STO stands for. Don't feel like looking it up. He gets his arm across their chest, then uses his leg to trip him and drives him forward. Very high impact. Alright, so then we got Okada, who recently lost the IWGP Heavyweight title and appears to have kind of changed his look up a bit, so the outfit might look a little different that he comes out to. Let's see. That's a tiny picture. Yeah, there's Okada. So Okada, I've compared to The Rock quite a few times, and that is the best comparison I could make. But I'd say kind of The Rock combined with, I don't know, Eddie Guerrero, well, maybe just a bit. I mean, you can see that a lot of the main guys in New Japan now were really influenced by 90s wrestling. So you can see a lot of similarities in there. I mean, he has one of the best drop kicks I've ever seen in pro wrestling. So it's not like he's not as much of a power wrestler as The Rock was. He doesn't use as many slams and things like that. He tends to use a pretty good variety. I mean, he's very adaptable. That's one of the reasons why he's been on the top in New Japan for the last 5-ish years, I think. Because he can have a match with anybody and look good. And he can work in their style and mesh with just about anyone. And for his finisher, he recently adopted, I think it's the Cobra Clutch as a finisher, a submission finisher, but primarily he will use the Rainmaker clothesline, which is he gets around behind him with a wrist lock, almost a position that you'd use for a German suplex. In fact, he sometimes does a German suplex, then tries to go into the Rainmaker. But he gets the wrist lock, he'll swing him around and do a short arm clothesline. And he gets a lot of torque off of it, so it's a pretty good looking finish. Alright, then we got Jay White, who recently came back from excursion, and I talked about the Young Lion program in the other video, so watch that if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say excursion. Let's see here. It's a decent enough picture of him. So he's from New Zealand, and he very much likes to work as a heel. I mean, he likes pissing the crowd off. And he likes to use a lot of suplexes. I wouldn't go so far as to say that he's working a Taz style when it comes to that. But he does like to use a lot of variations on the suplex. Does not mind getting rough on the outside at all. And he's started working a very hard-hitting, brutal kind of style. So, I mean, he likes being the heel that beats the crap out of the baby face and pisses the crowd off by being so brutal, which is the correct kind of heel for New Japan in my opinion. He uses, it's kind of a hard move to describe, you'll just have to see it, his finisher. It's kind of a rolling neck breaker, or a DDT, it's kind of hard to explain. Alright, so let's get to Bad Luck Fale. So we're at over 30 minutes. I'm going to try and power through the rest of these. But then there's 20 guys. I'm trying to explain them. So Bad Luck Fale is also from New Zealand, I believe. He's Islander in his lineage. Big dude. I think 6'2" or 6. I think he was 6'2" or 6'4". I mean, he's a pretty damn big guy. And he mostly works tag matches, but he's also a mainstay in the tournament. Well, he will do stuff that will surprise you. He's actually, he's a big man, but he kind of reminds me of Vader. He's doesn't have quite as much of a gut as Vader did. I'm just comparing how they look. It's because it's not really about how they look. It's just the fact that Vader is known as one of the best big men of all time. Bam Bam Bigelow, one of the best big men of all time, because they can also move. And Fale can move. I mean, he can work a match. He can go out there and work a solid 20, 30-minute match if he needs to. Yeah, he'll get gassed out, but he will come back and, he can work a match. But also, because of his size and the fact that he's so much bigger than pretty much everybody, you're also going to see a lot of traditional chop the big man down type of stuff in his matches, because it works. Nothing wrong with it. He uses a variation on the crucifix bomb. It's kind of the generic name for it. The Razor's Edge would be the old school original name for it. It's that the crucifix position and then the slam forward, only because of his size, he does it as a launching version. He doesn't fall. He just kind of launches them over his head. So it's kind of a combination of both the Razor's Edge and the Jackknife. So, yeah, I mean, if you like big man wrestlers, I think you'll probably enjoy him. I tend to not like big man wrestlers, but I do enjoy his matches, so that ought to tell you something. Alright, up next, I think this is his first year in the tournament, Hangman Page. Bullet Club member, mostly works Ring of Honor, so I'm not a whole lot familiar with him, honestly. From what I've seen, he's okay. I mean, he had a really good match against Jay White a while back, and from, everything else I've seen, he's pretty good. But he doesn't really stand out to me all that much, and I don't see him all that much, so I can't really comment too much on him. I'm not even sure what his finisher is, to be honest. Alright, we have Juice Robinson up next. Now, he was in NXT. There's a picture of him there as CJ Parker, I guess his name was, where apparently he did very poorly. They didn't really let him do much. He didn't get over. Didn't accomplish a whole lot. So now you're going to see him coming out, and he is rather flamboyant. He likes wearing rather colorful outfits and something about gummy bears or something to that effect. And he recently won the New Japan Pro Wrestling's U.S. Heavyweight title. They created that title last year, and he is the third individual to hold it. He recently beat Jay White for that title in a very, very hard-hitting match. It was just a few days ago, as of the recording of this video, at the G1 Climax Special in San Francisco. New Japan has been doing more. There's a very tiny picture of him after he won the title. There he is with it right after the match. Very blurry picture. There's a good one. That's not the right title, though. So he uses, for his finisher, let's see. What the hell does... Christian used it. A few people have used it. It's the getting the arms locked, then kind of bringing them around behind you and then face planting them. I can't remember what Christian called it, but he used to use it. He might still use it. I don't know. I haven't seen any of those guys for ages. I know Edge had to retire. But he uses that. He's kind of in. You can tell that he was inspired somewhat by Booker T. He does work some of that Booker T's style in some ways, but he's very much his own wrestler. He's very entertaining, very explosive, and energetic. You're just going to have to watch him and see what you think. But if I could compare him to anybody, it's a bit like Booker T, but faster and a lot more explosive, which is saying something. Alright, so now we have Tama Tonga. There's Tama Tonga, his brother Tongaloa, and their father Haku, a.k.a. Ming. Original member of Bullet Club. Let's see, there's a good shot of him. So, Tama Tonga is an interesting individual. It's kind of hard to describe his style. It's very fluid. He uses a lot of counter wrestling, a lot of movement in his matches. I'm trying to think of anybody I could compare him to, and I cannot think of anyone. He's very unique. He uses a cutter as a finisher. He adopted that from Carl Anderson, who used it. In New Japan, they call it the gun stun. I don't know why, but they do. So, yeah, again, he's just one you'll have to see for yourself. It's really hard to explain his style. You just have to see it. Then we got Hiroki Goto. Let's see if I can get a good shot at him. That's not too bad. Hiroki Goto. So he's kind of from the same generation of wrestlers as Tanahashi, bit younger. And he's never held the IWGP Heavyweight title despite getting several, I say several, quite a few shots at the title, which has kind of become a running thing with him. The question of whether or not he can keep it together and win in big match situations. I believe he is currently the Never Openweight Championship, which is kind of... That one's hard to explain. I'd have to do an entire video just on the titles of New Japan because they have too many, I think. That's my opinion, but I think they do. The Never Openweight title was meant to be for newer guys, up-and-comers, but it kind of ended up being the Strong Style Championship. It's the one that is mostly competed over by the guys that like to beat the crap out of each other. Goto works the Strong Style. I talked about that with Toge Makabe. It's very much a style of beat the shit out of each other. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. So you're going to see a lot of strikes, slams, suplexes. Goto has a variety of ways that he likes to plant people's heads onto his knee, or various parts of their body onto his knee. He does like a Death Valley driver onto his knee as a signature move. His finisher is kind of a... I'm sure I saw a picture of him getting ready to do it. Right here. Yeah, the Goto Revolution. So as you can see, he gets a hold of their head in like a reverse DDT position. Then he drives them down with his arm into his knee. So it's kind of a combination backbreaker clothesline onto his knee, all in one movement. It looks absolutely brutal. Sometimes he'll do a front version of it first. There's a little gif of it. So yeah, it's a very brutal looking finisher. So yeah, if you like really athletic, beat the shit out of each other kind of matches, you're gonna like Goto, same as Makabe. And then we got Sonata up next. Let's see. Here's a pretty good picture of him. He has a bit of a goofy looking haircut, I would say. But, what can I say about him? He was trained by the Keiji Muto, the Great Muta. So you're going to see a lot of that influence in his style. He doesn't use a lot of kicks and stuff, though. It's a lot of... well, he uses some high-flying stuff. He likes to use springboard drop kicks. He has a really good drop kick. It's almost as good as Okada's. He uses a moonsault as a backup finisher. He likes to use... It's kind of a variation on the Dragon Sleeper. Is his main finisher, the Cold Skull Lock, I think is what he calls it. So yeah, he's extremely athletic, tends to work at a really fast pace, but can also slow things down. I mean, he's another one that you'll just have to see his style to really understand it. It's not, I can't really compare him to anybody in particular. You know, again, his style is a bit more like cruiserweights of the WCW era, but he's a heavyweight. So it's kind of hard to compare him to anybody in particular. Let's move on to Ishii, the Stone Pitbull. So Ishii is kind of a very compact guy. He reminds me in his overall look. He reminds me of Taz. He doesn't use a lot of suplexes, although he does use some. And he's another strong style guy. So lots of forearms, gonna beat the crap out of each other, slam each other around, and just generally hurt the other guy as much as he possibly can. And he uses Brainbuster. Old school falling brainbuster, which a vertical suplex into a DDT, basically. Yeah, again, you're going to get great matches with Ishii. They're going to be very, very, I don't know if I want to say athletic, because he tends to not be real fast. But very hard-hitting, very rough, smash mouth style matches. Alright, then we got Toru Yano. Kind of hard to explain Toru Yano. He cheats all the time. Basically. He cheats all the time, and he's funny. He's going to kind of be the easy knight for everybody in his division. But don't be surprised when he does win matches, because he will win a few. But yeah, other than just describing him as being a cheater that is kind of funny, I don't know how else to describe him. You'll just have to see it and decide whether you like it or not. I think he's funny. You might find him irritating. It's a personal thing. Alright, then we have Kenny Omega, who, if you've seen anything about New Japan, you've probably heard about him, the matches he's had with Okada. Trying to find a newer pic of him. That's him with Cody Rhodes right there. That's not a bad picture. Yeah, that's a better one. So, Kenny Omega, what can I say? He's pretty well rounded. He doesn't do a whole lot of mat wrestling. He's kind of what you'd call new style. I mean, again, he's a heavyweight, but he came out of the junior heavyweight division, so he still uses a lot of the high flying stuff. Very fast pace. You're going to see a lot of knee strikes, the V-trigger knee. Again, in New Japan, it is a very common thing for an individual to have a particular strike that they'll use, and they'll use it repeatedly through a match as a setup move, as something to wear the other guys down, or other guy down. So it might seem like he uses it excessively. Maybe he does, but at the same time, it's normal in New Japan for some individuals to do that. It's just one of the style choices that guys sometimes have in New Japan, or that they make in New Japan. So again, I can't really compare him stylistically to anyone in particular. Maybe Canyon, if you remember him from WCW, or if you watched ECW at all, Nova. I would compare him to those two, because he is kind of, you know, I don't want to say that he's super innovative, because he doesn't do new stuff constantly, but he uses a variety of moves that you don't see a lot. His move, his actual finisher, the one-winged angel, is he gets him up on his shoulders and then brings him forward into kind of a power bomb slam. It's not really a power bomb; it's a front slam. It's pretty brutal, and nobody's ever kicked out of it, best of my knowledge. There have been a couple of people who have been able to grab the rope after the move, but no one's kicked out. Alright, now we've got Naito. That is a good picture for Naito. Or that one. That's a really good one. So, Naito is the leader of the Los Ingobernables faction. I talked about them in the other video, so I'm not going to go into all that. Stylistically, again, you're going to see a lot of the lucha influence, so I can compare him to pretty much any of the WCW cruiserweight luchadors. But he uses a lot more power stuff these days. He is a heavyweight, of course. It's a heavyweight tournament. But he's going to be kind of... It's the first time you see a Naito match, it's going to be interesting for you. It's kind of hard to explain, because he'll go from just being very tranquilo, relaxed, to incredibly explosive. I'd compare him a bit to Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's very much, the Los Ingobernables are very much the rebels, anti-authority in New Japan. So yeah, I mean, I guess if I could compare him to anybody, it would be kind of Stone Cold Steve Austin mixed with Rey Mysterio, in a way. Very strange combination, but it kind of works. Alright, now we got Kota Ibushi. Let's see. Find a picture of him that's reasonably good. That's a decent one. So Kota Ibushi, again, one of those guys that I can't really compare him to anybody right offhand. If you're familiar with Tajiri at all, I think he was trained by Tajiri. No, that was Kushida. Kushida was trained by Tajiri. I don't remember who trained Kota Ibushi. I'm not sure if anybody said. He competed in karate, I believe. So he uses a lot of kicks. You're going to see him use a lot of kicks. He's adopted a knee strike as a finisher. He also does high flying. He's very well rounded. So again, I could compare him. If you're familiar with Great Muta, I could compare him to him in some ways, because you're going to see a lot of kicks, a lot of strikes. some high flying. You're going to see a little bit of mat work. He's very well rounded. You're going to see a little bit of everything with Kota Ibushi. And he can also move. He's fast. All right. Finally, the last of the 20. Here we've got Zack Sabre Jr., who I think you'll find is kind of hit and miss. It'll depend on what you like personally if you care for Zack Sabre Jr. As you can see, he is a mat-based wrestler. Trying to find... And we've got somebody mowing grass outside. This kind of, to me, this sums up some of my problems with him as a heavyweight, because he works as a heavyweight. This is him going up against Tomohiro Ishii. I talked about Ishii earlier. Now, Ishii is not a tall guy. He's only like 5'6", 5'7", something. He's not very tall. But he is strong. He's built. Now, you can see him there compared to Zack Sabre Jr. Even though Sabre Jr. is taller, he looks like a damn child in some ways next to Ishii. That's an exaggeration, but he does not have a lot of meat on his bones. He's very skinny, which works with his style because he does a lot of transitions, a lot of movement with submission holds and stuff. But again, this is just me. You might enjoy his style. But it's very much submission-based, lots of movement, constantly transitioning into different holds, which, in my view, it doesn't look like he's really doing anything a lot of the time. He uses some strikes, but to me, it doesn't look like he has any power behind them at all. And, you know, he can only work one match, his match. He's one of those wrestlers that every single match you see him in is pretty much going to be the same thing. Because working in the heavyweight division, he's working up against guys that are all bigger and stronger than he is. So the only believable match he can work, of course, is the one he wants to work, which is the submission stuff. So it's repetitive. So again, it just depends on if you like that style. I'm not trying to shit on the guy. I'm just saying that personally, I don't care for his style all that much. He doesn't stay in any one submission hold long enough to look like it's really doing anything a lot of times. He doesn't look like he has any power behind his strikes. And because he cannot really believably take any offense, or very much offense, from the bigger guys, every single match he works is slow. It's very, very slow. So it's one of those things that if you don't mind slow mat-based submission hold heavy matches, you'll probably be cool with him. But at the same time, once you've seen one of his matches, you've seen all of his matches, pretty much. So, again, I'm not trying to shit on the guy. I'm just trying to give you my view on him as a performer. You're just going to have to watch and see what you think for yourself, obviously. I'm not trying to tell you how to view him. I'm just telling you my view. I think he'll still give some good matches, some interesting matchups through the tournament. I'm not saying that all of his matches will be boring or that he can't put on a good match or anything. I'm just saying that out of everybody in the tournament, he's probably the one that I like the least. So that is the G1 Climax Tournament 2018 and all of the participants. Again, the first night of the tournament is July 14th. I recommend going ahead and coming here to New Japan World, which is NJPW1972.com. That's NJPW1972.com. 1972 was when the company was founded. So, yeah, if you're new to New Japan and you're not sure where to start with a tournament. I started watching New Japan in 2015. with the G1 Climax Tournament because I found that there were several people online doing fan commentary where they would watch the show and do commentary live along with it, and then you could sync it up later and watch it. And for a lot of people, not watching a Japanese promotion is because the lack of English commentary. Well, these days, over the last year and a half, 2 years, New Japan has been steadily increasing the amount of their shows with English commentary. I don't think every single show of the tournament is going to have English commentary. I'm not sure. They might this year. But a lot of them are going to. Probably the first few and then the last few will have English commentary, certainly. Because I think that's how they did it last year. It was like the first 4 or 5 had English commentary, and then the last a bunch did as well. Some of the shows may not have commentary at all. Because, like I said, you have to remember that it's 19 shows they're doing in just under a month, with 5 singles matches and an assortment of tag title matches on every single card. 18 of those, and then you have the finale. So it's a lot of matches. They're not going to have commentary for every single one of them, probably. But I would recommend watching the entire tournament, or at least trying to catch as many as you can. Because if you want a proper introduction to what New Japan is all about, its style, nothing is better than the G1 Climax Tournament. Because you're going to consistently see the same guys over a period of time, so you can get used to them. You'll be able to get used to the tag team matches. You'll get to see some of the young lions. Pardon me. Dry spot on my throat, I think. You'll see some of the other guys in the tag team matches, and you'll be able to get used to what New Japan has to offer. And the individuals of the promotion, the performers, the wrestlers, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, if you want to get into New Japan, the G1 Climax is a good place to start. It might be a lot to take in for a first-time viewing, but, not really, because it is spread out. 19 shows over a period of just under a month, so it's a bit more than, say, watching a weekly show, obviously. But, again, just to kind of recap my sentiment about it, it's really the best way to get into New Japan, because you're going to see what it's all about. They like tournaments. They have they have one for every division every year. So, at least one. So there's juniors, junior tag, heavyweight division. And then they have, earlier in the year, single elimination tournament. So they have like 5 or 6 tournaments a year. So they like their tournaments. And there's a reason for that. A tournament is a way to get into lots of matches, set up new feuds, see what the crowd responds to. And yeah, it's a way to book a big chunk of time without having to try and figure out every last little thing that's going to happen. You can rely on the matches to be good enough to keep people interested, and they pretty much always are. But yeah, that's the G1 Climax. Sorry I get so rambly, that's just how I am. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.